If you're a fan of the otome genre, then you've most likely seen your fair share of mobile otome games. Heck, they might even be the reason you got into the otome genre in the first place. In my case, that's exactly how I discovered these games. From playing as a commoner selected to be the next ruler of her country, to a woman finding herself transported back to the Sengoku period, to even an office worker who accidentally had a one-night stand with her coworker with almost no recollection of the night before. I found myself being sucked into each and every story I read. Now, while I like to say I've played a decent amount of mobile games, there were two companies whose games I always tended to gravitate towards, Cybird and Voltage. Now, while I enjoy each company in different aspects, there's no denying that Voltage takes the cake when it comes to the amount of games they have under their belt. My personal favorites are Samurai Love Ballad Party and Irresistible Mistakes. And although I loved my time playing them a couple years ago, I have to admit, Voltage kind of fell off my radar the last few years as I moved mainly to console games rather than mobile. It wasn't until last year when I learned that Voltage would be developing and publishing their very first, fully voiced, I might add, otome game for the Nintendo Switch, titled Even If Tempest. Now, I'm not going to lie, when I first heard about Even If Tempest, I was a little confused by the whole premise. With the synopsis mentioning a woman dying, a witch, and a carnival, I was baffled as to what on earth this game could even be about. But with the dark imagery in its teaser photo, and a synopsis almost guaranteeing me angst, well, sign me up for the sad train, baby! And here we are today. Did it live up to my expectations? Was I just as confused playing the game as I was when reading its synopsis? Well, let's take a look and see what this game has to offer. Even If Tempest follows our main character, Anastasia Linzel, a noble woman who's been treated poorly time and time again by her father, stepmother, and her sister. Locked away in her family's attic, with only herself and her thoughts, she can only dream of the day that she'll get to step outside into the real world. But even when that dream becomes a reality, those who gave her hope ultimately lead to her despair once again, with the result not ending in imprisonment like before, but her death. After meeting her demise, Anastasia encounters a witch named Rune, who bestows her the ability of Fatal Rewind, a power allowing her to turn back time after passing away, granting her a second chance at life. Anastasia accepts this ability under the condition to help put a stop to the Witch of Ruin, and as she awakens once more, 8 years younger, she's spurred on by nothing but two things: the chance to become her ideal self and revenge. Even If Tempest has only 4 suitors, but a very unique way of completing said routes. I'll introduce the love interests first, and then touch on the playing order. Let's begin with the 2 suitors that are playable from the beginning, starting off with Crius Castlerock. Crius Castlerock is the vice commander of the Wings of Garuda, an order that cares for the goddess's favored birds. After Anastasia's fatal rewind, she joins the Wings of Garuda and looks up to Crius as not only a fellow order member, but as a kind and caring man. Next is Tyrell E. Lister, a highly regarded inquisitor whose job is to investigate and apprehend witches. His cold demeanor makes it hard for others to approach him, but his exceptional powers of deduction make him one of the best in his field of work. Moving on, we have Zen Sorefield. In Anastasia's first life, he worked for Prince Lucien, but in her second life, he's known as a detective. Anastasia knows next to nothing about him, and with Zen not being a man of many words in their few encounters, she's very cautious around him, hoping to learn whether he can aid her or harm her. And finally, we have the third prince, Lucien Neuschburn. He's known Anastasia since they were little, and was the first person to help grant her freedom in her first life. Known to the public for his ice-cold demeanor, how he acts behind closed doors is a different matter entirely. Now let me explain how the playing order works. From the beginning, you can only play Crius or Tyrell's route. Whichever character you don't pick on your first playthrough, you'll immediately get sent straight into their route after completing Chapter 4 of the previous suitor. Following the completion of Crius and Tyrell's route, you'll immediately get sent into Zen's route, and after Zen, finally Lucien's route. And when I say immediately, I literally mean immediately. You'll never get sent to the main menu like most games. Chapter 4 will simply end for one route, and then Chapter 1 will begin right away with the next suitor. After completing the 4 suitors routes from chapters 1 to 4, you'll then unlock the final chapter for Creus, Tyrell, and Lucien, and following those 3, you'll be able to unlock Zen's final chapter. Finally, once all those routes are completed, you can then unlock the finale chapter. This game has got to have one of the most unique playthrough systems I've ever seen, and honestly, I really enjoyed it. You may have just listened to my route progression explanation and thought, why is this so confusing? Why are there so many routes locked? And without me giving away any spoilers, all I can say is that the chapters are set up this way specifically to aid in the storytelling. The game wouldn't have the same impact, nor make any sense, if all the routes were available from the beginning. And when you get to the finale, which ties up loose ends and solves any unanswered questions, you can look at this tale as a whole and appreciate the story that I personally thought was executed very well. Plus, when I finally got to read each suitor's final chapter, it felt like I had truly earned the right to see the happy ending, and my heart was melting for each and every one of them. Now let's talk about one of the main features of this game, the Carnival Witch Trials. This carnival was created by the Witch of Ruin for their own entertainment to enjoy the follies of humanity. During this event, the witch will select 5 people, known as the Sacrificia, and in that pool of 5, one person will commit a murder, marking them as the Membrum. A trial will be held the following evening with a jury of 300 randomly picked citizens to determine who they think is the culprit. If the jury is correct, the Membrum will be executed and the jury will have won. But if the jury selects the wrong Sacrificia, then an innocent person will be executed and the Membrum will commit another murder until a trial is held the following day. This will repeat until either the Membrum is found guilty by the jury or the Membrum is the last one standing. This is quite literally a trial of witches, for witches, by witches. And who is this Witch of Ruin behind it all? Well, you'll just have to play the game yourself to find out. During each trial, Anastasia will play a key role. Whether she's assisting the trial's proceedings or is one of the Sacrificia herself, you'll have to make key decisions that will greatly impact the results of the trial. One wrong decision and you'll lead either Anastasia or an innocent victim to their demise, so choose wisely. Or you could just use a walkthrough like me, since apparently I can't clear my name if my life literally depended on it. As the routes progress, Anastasia will earn abilities that can help aid in the trials. Make sure you utilize these abilities to achieve the best outcome, but you have to think fast when it comes to choosing which ability to implement, as this game has, you know 'em, you love 'em, quick timed events! Yeah, this is yet another reason to use a walkthrough. The witch trials were a great feature in this game. Not only did it play a big part in the storytelling, but the trials kept me engaged. From conducting investigations with the Sacrificia, to sifting through evidence to present in the trials, to using said evidence to persuade the jury in the direction that benefits Anastasia the most. You could almost consider this to be a sort of mini-game, and it was extremely satisfying to reach the end of each trial and see if your prediction on who the culprit is was correct or not. My first route was Tyrell, and let me tell you, I was left speechless when I discovered who the Membrum was. As the synopsis of this game suggests, the overall tone of this otome is dark, playing heavily on the theme of death. I mean, the whole concept of this game revolves around Anastasia rewinding time every time she dies. And there are some routes where she's so determined to get things right that she'll kill herself over and over again in the hopes of obtaining the best possible outcome. Time and time again, you have to watch Anastasia experience death, loss, heartache, and despair. And although the story ends on a happy note, this is by all means not a lighthearted game. Something that kept playing on my mind while going through this game was that it seemed familiar to me, but in a way that I couldn't quite recall. Finally, after completing the game, it suddenly dawned on me. The reason it gave me a sense of familiarity is because it reminds me very much of the manhwas I read. Now, I'm a sucker for a good reincarnation time slip manhwa, and I've read almost too many to count at this point. But the one title that I felt the closest connection to this game with was The Abandoned Empress. Now, if you've read that entire series, you'd probably think that the connections are few and far in between, but the first volume of The Abandoned Empress made me feel the same emotions while playing the prologue of Even if Tempest. From a woman betrayed by those she loved, to meeting her demise, and later being granted a second chance at life, although what follows after those events greatly differ from each story. It's the first volume that had me hooked on the abandoned empress, just as the common route of Even If Tempest captured my attention. The art in this game is pretty good. Certainly an upgrade from Voltage's mobile games. I'm going to be honest, I wasn't expecting much when going into this title, but I ended up being genuinely surprised. I definitely didn't expect to like the CGs as much as I did. My personal favorite is the last CG in Lucien's good ending. If you know, you know. And how could I leave out the voice acting? Not only did this game include fully voiced characters, Even If Tempest has A-list voice actors playing the roles of the love interests, and then some. Many of the seiyus have appeared in other Otome games, but one voice actor that stood out to me was Takeuchi Shunsuke. Now I've heard him in other Otome games before, such as Zora in Bustafellows and Mitsuhide in Ikemen Sengoku, but this was my first time hearing him as one of the main love interests in a Switch game. And oh boy, this man's voice is like music to my ears. There were multiple times in his route that I just sat there replaying his voice lines over and over, and I am not ashamed to admit that in the slightest. It still blows my mind that he's the voice of Gudetama and Olaf from the Frozen redub. Folks, this is the duality of man at its finest. Now, I normally only talk about the voice acting from the love interests, but there is one seiyu that I absolutely need to discuss with you guys. This game has got to have, hands down, the best performance I've heard from Tetsuya Kakihara in an Otome game. Seriously, this man went above and beyond with his character, and I loved every scene that he was in. I won't spoil who he plays in this game, but I can guarantee you that you'll recognize him instantly when playing. He was yet another character whose lines I kept replaying time and time again, and oh, his monologues were so good! 10 out of 10, he gave an amazing performance. Now moving on, who was my favorite suitor? Oh my gosh, you guys, I am so happy with who turned out to be my favorite because I fell so hard for this man, it's not even funny. I went into this game thinking Zen would be my least favorite character, but he just had me swooning left, right, and center. Due to the events in his route, Zen becomes Anastasia's biggest ally, and I felt that they had the best overall chemistry. Zen's final chapter had me squealing and clutching at my heart nonstop, and his romantic scenes will go down in history as some of my favorites. I absolutely love when a game takes my expectations and flips them on their head, and it just makes the playing experience all the more enjoyable because of it. An extremely close second would have to be Tyrell. I had been eyeing him before I had even started the game, and his route didn't let me down in the slightest. I loved his backstory, and his route really tugged on my heartstrings. I enjoyed the interactions he had with Anastasia, and with him being an Inquisitor, you got to focus a lot more on the witch trials and learn some key information. All in all, I think this game had some great characters, and although Lucien and Creus weren't my favorites, I still had a blast playing their routes. Now we're getting into my final thoughts. Overall, what did I think of this game? I personally had a wonderful time playing Even If Tempest. I truly think the reason I fell in love with this game is because I found it at the right place and at the right time. In all honesty, prior to playing this game, I was feeling stuck in an Otome rut. I felt as though the games were getting repetitive. I'd play a prologue, then pick a suitor, then another, and then another until the game was completed, with the exception of an unlockable route every now and then. With Even If Tempest, you don't get much say in what order you play, nor do you achieve the good endings until you've played every suitor. The story progression, along with the witch trials, had me guessing what would happen up until the end, and I love that this broke the stale routine of Otome games that I had grown so accustomed to. I also enjoyed the pace of this game. With me completing it in just a little over 25 hours, it was a wonderful break from the 50+ hour games that I had been playing before, and I think it was exactly the game I needed at that moment in time. I loved pretty much everything about Even If Tempest. From the music, to the characters, to the lore of the world, everything about it was unique and a joy to experience. This is one of those titles that I wish I could clear my memories and replay from the beginning, and it's those games that leave a lasting impression on me. If I had to make any criticisms about this game, it would be a few minor things. The first would be that the game glitched on me twice during my playthrough. One time, while I was scrolling through the visual log, it just kept me in a constant loop scrolling through the text, and no matter what button I pressed, I couldn't get out of this screen. So I had to close the game and open it again. Now that doesn't sound too bad, but I'm terrible at saving, so it took me a while to get back to where I was. The second time, the game just flat out closed on me. And did you think I learned to save from my first experience? Nope! What can I say? I'm a glutton for punishment. The second minor complaint that I have is the audio quality. Music-wise, fantastic. Voice-wise, it's not the best. I don't know why, but it sounds like they're talking through soup cans throughout the entire game.
あなたが一番望むものは何？
お食事をお持ちしましたよ。どうしたのですか？ひどい顔色。それに真意がびっしょり濡れてるじゃありませんか。オーラお嬢様、支度のお時間でございます。
I don't know if this was due to the microphone quality or an audio mixing issue, but it caught me off guard when I first heard it. Now, this is not a major concern, and I got accustomed to it about half an hour into playing, but there's definitely room for improvement in the audio department. The last gripe I have is that, although I loved the pace and the length of this game, I would have loved to have seen more of Anastasia and her partner after they became a couple. Which is exciting because not long after the release of Even If Tempest last year, they announced that the development for the fan disc was already in the works, and slated for a release in 2023, which means that this girl here is one happy camper. With the fan disc, titled Even If Tempest Dawning Connections, we'll get to dive more into the relationships established in the first game, read new side stories, and check out an alternate scenario following the events in the previous title, and I can guarantee you guys, I'll be checking this out day one upon its release. Do I recommend this title? Absolutely. Even If Tempest is a tale full of mystery, action, and deception, full of twists and turns along the way. If you're looking for a change of pace, or just a unique game to add to your collection, I couldn't think of a better recommendation. My one tip that I'll give you guys is to keep an eye on this game in the Nintendo eStore. I got my copy while it was on sale, and since then I've seen it go on sale about 2 more times. Voltage tends to hold sales relatively often, so if you're looking to save a few extra bucks, then definitely keep your eyes peeled. Save some money and add to your OTOME collection. It's a win-win in my eyes. Voltage is by no means a stranger to the OTOME world, but taking a leap from mobile to a console-only game was a big step for the company. They tried something new and unique, and it paid off. I, for one, am very excited to get my hands on the fan disc, and with the well-reception Even If Tempest received, I'm sure that this is just the beginning of bigger and better things for Voltage. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed this review. I had a really fun time making this one. It's not often a game takes me by surprise, but Even If Tempest was a joy to play from start to finish. Now if you've reached this far, you may have noticed that I haven't included a rating for this game. And that's because, going forward, I've decided to omit a rating and instead explain why I do or do not recommend a game and why I feel that way. The reason for this is because I don't want you guys going into a game thinking, Natalie gave it an 8 out of 10, so I should be expecting an 8 too. Instead, I'd like you guys to go into a game with an open mind, without any concrete expectations, and decide for yourself what you think by the end game. There's been many times where I myself have gone into a title with certain expectations, and was left feeling underwhelmed in some cases, or pleasantly surprised in others. And I wish that I had gone into more titles without any preconceived notions. Another reason why I've decided to omit a rating in my review videos is because my opinion is always changing. As I play more games and experience more stories, it gives me a chance to look back on past games and see where my opinion has changed for either the better or the worse. What game I may have initially seen as a 7 may now be seen as a 9, and vice versa. To solve this, I will still be updating my visual novel database profile with every OTOME I've played, and you can always check out my page to see my most up-to-date rating. Thank you if you made it to the end of this video. I really appreciate your support, and thank you so much for watching. Until next time guys, see ya!